Hey guys, it's Lakin. Welcome to my bed talk. I'm currently snowed in my house from the snowstorm that's just hit the East Coast, and I thought what better way to utilize my free time by making a video essay about something that I literally cannot stop thinking about. So I have my notes and I think we're gonna go ahead and get into it. So I just got back from seeing Avatar Fire and Ash for the third time, and I have a lot of thoughts about that. But that's for a different video, a different time, maybe. But I obviously have been binge watching these movies because I'm just so obsessed with them right now. I've been hitting that fandom wiki. I've been watching the James Cameron interviews, the cast interviews. I've been breathing, and sleeping this movie franchise. I genuinely can't enjoy anything normally ever. When I am really liking something, it's like I have to consume it in any form. Don't know what that says about me. Not gonna think about that for too long. But as I've been watching these movies, the one thing that I've been harping on, and I guess not harping on, but hyper focusing on, is Natayam. But more specifically, his role as the eldest sibling in these movies, specifically Way of Water. So that's what initially sparked this idea, made me want to put pen to paper, quill to ink to parchment. Now, I'm not saying I'm an expert in anything that I'm getting ready to talk about. This is just something that I have a genuine interest in, and it made me want to dedicate time to. My qualifications, I would say, are the fact that I'm an eldest sibling myself. I am friends with mostly eldest siblings. I also have a degree in psychology. I'm pursuing my master's in such, and my concentration in undergrad was personality. Now, I have a lot of feelings about eldest children, especially eldest daughters, when you're looking at media. Well, not only media, but in real life as well. As an eldest sibling myself, I find myself gravitating towards these characters that are the eldest siblings, and if they're not, have these qualities that most eldest siblings do. The eldest is typically very type A, has a high responsibility for others. They are prone to perfectionism. They tend to be more so control freaks. They are highly neurotic and anxious. They care for others, especially those that they're really close with. They're also very nurturing, and this all stems from them having this early caregiving role put onto them at such a young age. Again, I am not saying that all eldest siblings are like this. Household dynamics indicate this. Family dynamics play a huge part in how these traits manifest or don't. The presence of types of abuse in households, or the lack thereof. Things like class and race really help perpetuate these traits. There's a genetic factor that indicate personality traits. This is just the general knowledge that psychologists have based on case studies and brain scans. This was one of the niches that I absolutely loved learning about in undergrad. I think birth order plays such a huge role in how you turn out and how your personality manifests and turns you into who you are as a person, at least to me. I found that the studies that I was a part of and conducted, that it also found the same. But again, in this particular character's instance, Natayam fills this role of the perfect eldest sibling and what they're supposed to be very well. He's the golden boy of the Sully children. He became a warrior very young. He became worthy in Na'vi culture extremely young. He's always doing his best to support and care for his younger siblings. And this puts a lot of pressure on him from his parents, but especially his father, Jake. Time and time again, we see Natayam doing things that he doesn't want to do in order to be there for his younger siblings, be by their side, ensure their safety. And unfortunately, like many eldest siblings in media, being the protector of their younger sibling ultimately gets them killed. And he was only 15. Like, my god. He was too powerful. They had to nerf him. He, like, I mourn him every day. Especially now that this is, like, my main focus. But, oh my god. Every time I watch these movies and I see him, I get teary-eyed knowing what's to come. His presence and the lack thereof, especially in Fire and Ash, impacts every character on screen, their motivations, how they act, everything. The Avatar franchise has always been a story about colonialism, the environment, capitalism, the impacts and genocide on indigenous people for profit, but it's also a story about grief. We see this throughout every movie in so many characters that have impacted the story before the story even started, but in Fire and Ash particularly, it's about the grief of losing their son, their brother, their friend. His death makes these characters confront the absolute worst of themselves and the horror that they are currently living in. But I do believe that if Neteyam had to die, protecting his siblings was the way he would want to go out. That's just his character. It's who he proves himself to be time and time and again in Way of Water. It's just him. And every eldest sibling can relate. Even in death, he sees how guilty Loak is over his death and he chooses to comfort him instead of feel. In Loak's memory, when Neteyam asks him how he died, it's painful to even hear it, to simply ask the question. It is painful. You see it on his face and his body language. Jamie Flatters did an absolutely brilliant job with portraying this character and getting these emotions across. Neteyam doesn't really say a lot in these movies. He's never really the focal point in scenes he's in, but when he does, it means something. It's with a purpose. He speaks so much with his body language and his micro expressions that you know exactly how he's feeling about a situation that he's in. He doesn't have to physically speak for you to be able to see what his thoughts are, what he agrees with, what he disagrees with. His body truly says it all. But in this moment, he sees the guilt and the pain on his little brother's face and he chooses to reassure him. Loak says, "We could have escaped. I made us go back." And instead of scolding him like he normally would, he chooses to comfort him. He simply says, "Then we had to go back. That's not your fault." And Loak doubles down and he says, "Tell that to Dad. We weren't even supposed to be there. I disobeyed orders. I got us caught." And again, Neteyam says, "That's just you, little bro." Oh my god. And instead of letting his little brother believe for a second that he was the reason his big brother got killed, "That's just you. That's just you." And the way he says it is just like, it's already happened. It's over. It's done. The past is the past. There's nothing you can do now. There's nothing for me to forgive. I was supposed to protect you, and I did. Just the way, it literally makes me so emotional. Just because it's like, it's already done. It's already done. It's already happened. Fire and Ash takes place a couple of weeks after the Way of Water. These feelings of grief are still so fresh, and even like, he's dead. He's dead. And oh my god, like, I can't even articulate. It's just, in death, he chooses to comfort. He could have said anything. He could have said it, like, he could have agreed. He could have done anything to be like, "Yeah, like, it was your fault." Or he could have been like, "It's okay." But he doesn't. He says, "That's just you. It's over. It's over. It's done with." So much of Natayam's character and his relationship with his little brother is him trying to keep Loak out of trouble. He is always following his little brother into situations that he doesn't want to be in because he wants to protect him. He wants to keep an eye out for him. He wants to keep him safe. And he's always the one to put the blame on himself when they get caught after disobeying their parents. He's the first to defend him, always. And God, it just makes me so emotional to watch because it's literally what we're conditioned to do as the oldest. He never lets the blame be put on his younger siblings, especially Loak. It's second nature to take the fall for your sibling, to shift your parents' blame and anger onto you. The Judah instinct of it all. There are so many religious parallels in these movie franchises, and sometimes I think that growing up religious didn't really have an impact on me, but then I see these instincts happen in media and books, and it's so overwhelming because, God, the Judah instinct of it all to take the fall for your younger sibling. The cause of Natayam's death is highly debated in fandom and in universe. Natayam could have said anything else to Loak when he found out that his little brother got him killed, is the reason he died. And I say that in air quotes because Natayam doesn't believe that. So neither do I. We can debate all day long about what caused Natayam's death. We could say it was Natayam's fault for following his little brother. We could say it's Loak's fault for running into the ship to save Spider, knowing that his brother would follow him like he always does. We could say it's Spider's fault for getting kidnapped in the first place, or Jake's fault for coming to Pandora at all. You can pinpoint any scenario, anything to justify your outlook onto whose fault this is. But Natayam doesn't believe it's his little brother's fault. So I don't either. It's that simple. I don't either. Instead of blaming him, he chooses to stand by his brother's past decisions, even though it got him killed. Because what is an oldest sibling except a vessel of love for your younger sibling? We were put on this earth to guide them, protect them, love them, care for them until we die, and that's exactly what Natayam did. God, I have so many thoughts on these characters and this franchise as a whole. Truly, it's a top 3 for me. Top 3 movie franchises ever. Jimmy boy, give me a call. I want to pick your brain. And honestly, you might want to pick mine. You might want to pick mine. There's a lot cooking up here. At the end of the day, I'm still that 6-year-old little girl who went to the movies with her dad because he had to babysit for the day and thought that this would put me to sleep and it would be an easy day, but it didn't, and I fell in love with this franchise, and here I am now 22 and absolutely in love with these characters. But shifting from this scenario, and trust me, I have so many more thoughts. That's only a teeny fraction of my thoughts. We're now gonna look at eldest siblings from the angle of what I like to call daddy's number 1 boy. Now, daddy's number 1 boy is not a gender specific term. I think all eldest siblings, regardless of gender, fall into this line of thinking. So daddy's number 1 boy is in reference to Kendall Roy from the TV show Succession, as he frequently refers to himself as the eldest boy. This not only ties into his insecurity about his place in his family, but also about how he feels he deserves daddy's company because it's his right from the sacrifices that he had to make. Because being an eldest sibling is a sacrifice in itself. It's a sacrifice you were forced to make the second your little sibling was born. The second you aren't an only child anymore, it is now your responsibility to not only care for yourself, but to care for these other tiny little humans that have come after you. Your life is not your own anymore. There are others who need to be watched and cared for, and you have now filled this role as a guide to help them navigate through life while you yourself are doing that. Even though you're busy figuring out your path through life, you are expected to guide them as well, even though you have nothing figured out. It's the ultimate sacrifice that you didn't have a choice in making. Now, I only have one younger sibling, my little sister. We are about 4 years apart. I don't remember the day she was born. I was way too little to remember that, but I know that my life didn't start until the day she was born. Everything I have known since then has been her. It's been being there for her, watching for her, caring for her, helping her navigate life through the mundane. Now, most siblings have a rough patch in their youth that they eventually overcome. They eventually get close, they come together, and they take on more of this friendly role. In my experience, I thought my little sister was the most annoying thing in the world until she hit about 12 or 13, and then she got cool. Her and I have talked about this at length, but usually this is resolved when the two siblings come together from a common enemy. Whether that be a parent, a situation, a friend, something happens more specifically to the younger sibling where they now can comprehend and understand where their eldest sibling is coming from. Something in their brain just clicks and their behavior begins to shift. This is when the relationship goes from this is my annoying sibling to this is my friend. But even when I thought she was the most annoying thing in the world, I still knew that I loved her. There are few people that I know I love unconditionally in my life, and she is one of them, if not the most important one. There is nothing she could do that can make me stop loving her. Because who am I without my little sister? She made me a sister, so it's now my job to be that for her. And we see this in all forms of media. Fiona from Shameless, Katniss from The Hunger Games, Sitka from Brother Bear. They're all eldest siblings that prove time and time again the lengths they will go in order to protect their younger siblings. Fiona sacrifices her happiness and her life to take care of all of her younger siblings. She takes on this parent role. Katniss volunteers to take her sister's place in a literal death game where she knows she's going to die in order to protect her little sister. Sitka fights a literal bear, and when he is too weak to fight anymore and he sees the bear going for his little brothers, he shoves a spear in the ice, falls to his death, taking the bear with him to ensure no harm would come to his little brothers. No matter how parentified the eldest becomes, it's in your DNA to protect them. So to circle back to Daddy's number one boy, this is the feeling that eldest children get based on their desire to please. The eldest child typically has a greatness forced upon them. They're supposed to be the role model, the protector, the guider, duty bound to guide their siblings through life, through what is right and wrong. So there's an immense amount of pressure put on these children. Most become overachievers in athletics, academics, hobbies. They don't step out of line. They're the advice givers. They tend to be more reserved and quiet. They don't really talk about their problems or the emotional turmoil that they're experiencing. They don't want to taint this image of being the perfect child. They want to make life easier on their parents, knowing what their parents have on their plate. Their parents also tend to come to them for support or use them as an emotional crutch, which only adds to this pressure. Praise is a common need in these children, and the lack of praise can make them anxious or have feelings of failure in some regard, even when they've done nothing wrong. This only fuels the need to please. They want to do their best and become this person who no one needs to look out for. They don't want to be a burden. But Daddy's number one boy is the typical desire to please your father more than anyone. This is commonly seen in elder boy children, but if there are no boys in the home or the boys are too young, this is normally thrust upon the elder girl children. This ties into the Oedipus complex, the Electra complex, and the Laius complex. Now, these complexes were coined by Sigmund Freud, but they are a bastardized versions of the actual stories. If you don't know, The Oedipus complex is based on a play, Oedipus Rex. The story is that when Oedipus was born, his dad went to an oracle. He found out that this child was going to grow up to kill him. So him and his wife give the child to a servant to kill. But the servant can't do it, so he gives the child away, and that child eventually makes it to another kingdom where he's being raised by a different set of parents. Now, when Oedipus grows up, he goes to an oracle and he finds out that he is destined to murder his father and marry his mother. Now, naturally, Oedipus doesn't want to do that, so he runs away. On his journey, he accidentally kills this random man in the woods. He's really torn up about it. He makes it to this different kingdom. He ends up getting rid of their Sphinx problem, becomes the king because the people are so grateful. He marries the queen and they start a family. Now, years later, his wife and him find out that his parents, who he thought were his parents, actually weren't his parents, and that the queen that he married was his mother, and the servant that he killed all those years ago, that random guy, was his father. Now, his wife mother is so disgusted and fueled by grief that she hangs herself when Oedipus sees. He is so distraught that he blinds himself and he sends himself into exile over this whole scenario. So what did Freud do when he heard of this story? He decided to create a complex that says that all sons subconsciously want to marry and to be with their mothers, and they resent their fathers because their fathers are with their mothers. And he named this after a man who famously did not want that. Like, this was an accident. He did not want that to happen. The story of Electra is similar. As a child, Electra's father calls for his wife and his oldest daughter, Iphigenia, to be married because he's commanding this war front. Well, it's actually not a marriage. It's just a ploy to get his wife, Clytemnestra, and daughter to sacrifice Iphigenia because he has angered the goddess Artemis. When this happens, Clytemnestra is so enraged that she waits 10 years for him to come home for her and her lover to kill her husband. Electra and her brother were so young when this happened, and they have been fueled with rage and revenge over the idea of their mother killing their father, that they plot to kill their mother and her lover because they did this to their father. They get revenge for their father, and the play ends. Again, Freud read this play, saw how complex the stories and characters' motivations are, and came to the conclusion that all daughters hate their mother and want to be with their fathers. Now, the Laius complex is the interpretation of Oedipus's father in Oedipus Rex. It's Freud's belief that fathers subconsciously compete with their sons in all aspects, but mostly in affection of their wives or their child's mother. It's the fear of being replaced by your son in your wife's life, and it manifests as resentment and jealousy. In the case of a father only having daughters, it's the idea and jealousy that your daughters are now becoming this emotional crutch for your wife instead of you, and that is the resentment. In turn, this makes fathers be hard on their children, but especially their eldest. It creates these almost impossible expectations for their oldest to live up to. It's very hard on their eldest, and it only facilitates this desire to please them. Children typically already have their mother's love and affection. They don't have to do anything to earn this, but a father's love they do have to earn. And this also translates to figures that aren't their fathers. If there is no father present, they will seek this out in another authoritative role, like a grandfather, an uncle, a coach, any role that's taken up by an authoritative man or figure. If the family roles are reversed and it's the mother that kind of takes this role and the father is the one that's more affectionate, it's the same thing. This, though, is not to be confused with the Medea complex. The Medea complex is typically found in mothers who present their children based off their husband. This can be either they feel they are trapped to their husband because they had his children. It can be a mother believing that her dreams are gone because she became a mother, or because her husband sucks so badly and she can't do anything to break away from him because they have children together. A lot of the times this is due to the financial burden of them not being able to live outside of this family if they're relying on their husband monetarily to live this life, if they have a job or they don't have a job and they won't be able to financially support themselves or their children. It also is if they don't have a support system and their husband is their only support system, if they don't have any friends or anyone really outside of that and they are stuck with their husbands. Editing Lakin here. Ignore the face mask. I know how crazy this looks, but this is also due to if the mother has a abusive relationship with the father and she feels that she can't leave because of the children. Okay, you don't have to see this anymore. But if neither of these are present, if the eldest child has the most perfect parents in the world, this will be thrust upon someone else. It will be found somewhere, whether that be the child's teacher, sports coach, something. They need to please someone. And this becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy in these children because of the expectations thrust upon them. The second people know you're the oldest, you're typically hit with, "Oh, that makes sense," or "Oh, I could definitely tell." Hearing these confirmations, even if it's not true, repeats the cycle of narratives. Well, I'm not that yet, but eventually I will turn into that. So when situations arise and you think, what would I do as an older sibling? What would a eldest sibling do? You do it. You do these expectations. Even if it's not you or who you are or how you would normally act, you do it anyway. Even if it's not you, it's what people perceive as you anyway, regardless. And this way of thinking isn't just isolated to eldest siblings. This is found literally in everyone and everywhere. There are stereotypes for every single person, regardless of birth order, class, race, anything. Everything and everyone has stereotypes, and if you think it will come true, it can. If you believe that you are only these stereotypes, you will only be these stereotypes. An easy example that most people think about is if you have a child in high school and they are living in poverty and their family has lived in the cycle of poverty for a long time. It's the thought of, well, I'm not going to amount to anything anyway. Even if I wanted to afford higher education and go to higher education, I can't afford it. You don't try, therefore you perpetuate these cycles. It becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. There are things that you can do to break these cycles, but if you have the mindset that nothing you can do matters, the cycle will continue. Being daddy's number one boy is something that I was really interested in undergrad, and it really aligned with my ways of thinking at the time. I definitely did not come up with this complex. That's crazy, but when I talked to my professor about this, he kind of acted like he had no idea what I was talking about, but he understood what I was getting at. So, well, I guess I referred it to as like being daddy's number one boy, but he just kind of was like, I mean, that's definitely interesting. And I don't know if that was because he was a man and I was in a majority of a male-dominated classroom and I didn't really talk in there. Other than that, but specifically when we were talking about birth order is what made me really kind of think about this and point this out of, that's interesting. It made me have this connection. Now, birth order is something that's widely studied in this field. It's something that personality psychologists like to fall back on when they're doing studies or case studies or brain scans or trying to think of new ways to interpret things. And personality isn't just determined by birth order. Obviously, a lot of it's genetic, a lot of it's the environment, nature versus nurture. But there are so many studies of twins that were separated at birth that have the same interests and hobbies and personality. The Jim twins are arguably the most famous case in this area of if personality is genetic or not. Essentially, it was these two twins that were separated at birth. They were separated about 40 miles apart, 40 to 50 miles apart. They lived in Ohio, whole lives grew up 50 miles apart, right? They were both named James when they were born, which you can argue that that was a coincidence in itself. James is a very common name. But after 40 years of being separated, they ended up meeting, and it was crazy how similar their lives were. It ended up, they essentially paralleled their lives. So these two men, these two twins, both named James, they both married women named Linda. They both divorced their respective Lindas. They both got remarried to women who went by the name of Betty, and they both had children and named both of their sons James Allen. The only thing that was different was the spelling of the name Allen. They even had down to the same brand, model, and color of car. That's insane. I lied. I'm back. But both Jims, also worked in security. Granted, they weren't the same company. I think one was like a mall cop and the other was like a security guard at a hospital or something. But they both had the same profession. That's insane. But we also see this in our parents. A lot of the times we have the same interests that our parents do, the same personality traits that our parents have, which ties into the factor of, is the environment also what helps create you and your personality? Nature versus nurture. But if you guys are interested in that, I highly recommend looking that up. It's so interesting. Make Google Scholar your best friend. Truly, the best part of being able to attend university was the access that I had to scientific journals and articles. My favorite part of college was not, well, getting the degree that I paid and have gone into debt for, but having access to this large source of information where you can find literally anything. If anyone is watching, I hope you enjoyed this. I clearly did. I actually had a really good time, and I'm thinking of continuing doing this on other topics that I'm interested in. I go through these waves of niches where I'm like, I can't just think about it. I have to put pen to paper and verbalize it and just speak to someone about it. And it's not the same as just talking about it to my friends because they might not care. And it's just different being able to put it into video format and being able to like putting pen to paper and then reading and transferring. You guys get it. Something I really want to crank out is doomed siblings tropes. It's one of my favorites. Obviously, if you couldn't tell that between my whole Natam and Lowak rant. But I also have this interesting idea from when I went and watched a stage production of Footloose a couple months ago. But yeah, I hope you liked it. This was Bed Talk.